Alright, what's going on, guys? In an effort to ease the pain and make the wait a little bit easier for Elden Ring DLC, one endeavor we've undergone here on the channel is exploring the world of the game and trying to understand as much as possible in preparation so that when Shadow of the Erdtree actually does come out, we're all caught up on the lore and our heads wrapped around the fundamentals to understand the story as we play through it and during our investigations afterward. And today is another one of those days. Today we're exploring one of the most requested lore topics that is almost certainly going to make an appearance in the DLC, and that is the Helphen. This is a lore topic so obscure that it literally only has one line of reference text in the entire game, yet despite that has consistently piqued the interest of lore enthusiasts ever since it was discovered. So as we begin to unravel this mystery, let me give a shout out to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by War Thunder, the most advanced vehicle action game ever made. Battle through expansive wars with over 2,000 tanks, planes, and helicopters in extreme immersion due to the highly detailed vehicles all having their own components. And you can dive in right now for free on Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. Now, a really cool factor about this game is that you can pilot vehicles ranging from all the way back in 1920 to the modern day. And every single one is fully customizable however you like, with camos, icons, and even 3D customization with brushes and equipment. So dive into War Thunder today. You can use my link down in the description, where new players and players returning after 6 months can get a free bonus pack including premium vehicles, 100,000 silver lions, and a special Eagle of War decoration. So a big thank you to War Thunder, and now let's get back into it. As always, when addressing topics that are very obscure like this, the best way to begin is always with what we do know, and in this case it's one line of lore, coming from the very conveniently named Helphen Steeple. This greatsword has a description that reads, "Greatsword patterned after the black steeple of the Helphen, the lampwood which guides the dead of the spirit world. The lamplight is similar to grace in appearance, only it is said that it can only be seen by those who met their death in battle." Let's observe the appearance of this sword for a bit. Starting at the very top, we can see the blade has 3 horizontal spikes sticking out of each side, and then a triangular red gem at the base of these spikes, and that gem is important, so remember that. Continuing on down the blade, we can see 4 objects on each side protruding outward, growing larger as they go down, almost like tree branches. But what may actually be more interesting are the designs we can see reliefed along the blade. In the middle there, we can see 2 rows of what appear to be windows, an odd sort of cross icon that is a bit too small to make out, and then a row of archways leading to what appears to be a door. So in my opinion, it looks like the design on the blade is a church, fitting for a weapon called the steeple, which is of course the topmost spire of a church. The guard section of the blade with its saw-like edges doesn't stand out to me too much, but I do find the hatchwork design pretty interesting, although I'm not sure we can derive any meaning from it. But since this sword is said to be the design reminiscent of a light spirit sea to guide them to the spirit realm, we can take that what this sword is showing is a physical setting beyond what we can traverse. Now, we've discussed the idea of the spirit world in several lore videos leading up to this one, so I highly recommend checking those out because it will help you get the full picture of what exactly this alternate realm is. But in context of the Helphen, let's focus on how one gets there. In the lore of Elden Ring, there are many different forms of death. There was once the complete state of the Elden Ring before the shattering that included the proper order of death with the rune of death, but then the Elden Ring was shattered and destined death was removed, leading to the establishment of the Golden Order, which had its own rituals to enact its proper death, one of which involved being buried directly into the Erdtree's roots, and was seen as a hero's honor. But then after the death of Godwyn the Golden and the corruption of the Erdtree roots led to the emergence of Deathroot, breaking the flow of death and leading to a state of undeath where spirits now roam the world and their soulless bodies wander, looking for a way to pass on. But long before any of that existed, there was another way the dead were prepared for the afterlife. The explosive Ghostflame spell has a description that reads, "Sorcery of the servants of death. In the time when there was no Erdtree, death was burned in Ghostflame. Death birds were the keepers of that flame." We can still find the death birds fairly regularly throughout the lands between, typically typically only during the night. However, in the mountaintops of the giants, you can find them at any point during the day. These creatures are an eldritch abomination, long and spindly creatures with a beaked human skull and flowing ink-like wings, housing the spirits of priests of death. The death ritual spear gives us a bit more insight into this. It has a description that reads, "Ritual spear used by priests of old who were permitted to come among the death birds. The priests became guardians of the birds through the rite of death, which also serves as an oath sworn to their distant resurrection." So the death rite birds represent the boundary between life and the spirit world, and we can draw this back to the Helphen, knowing that through this Ghostflame ritual, the dead would end up at the same place. And that's because the Ash of War for the Helphen Steeple imbues the sword with Ghostflame. But there is a problem. It's apparent that Ghostflame has been abandoned as a death rite for a long time in the lands between, but there is an odd instance of it still being around. The Ghostflame torch has a description that reads, "Metal torch that burns with cold Ghostflame, tool of the fallen hawks who prowled the underground rivers. When the band's last embers were used up in their long search, they began to burn the bones of their fellows, acquiring the cold Ghostflame, but sealing their fate as dwellers of the underground for all eternity." Now, we've discussed the fallen hawks a long time ago, and if we look at Elden Ring's timeline, this expedition would have taken place before the war on Leyndell, a very long time after Ghostflame was no longer used as a death rite. Now, there's a lot to break down in that item description, such as why they were banned to the underworld forever, but the important thing to glean from that is that even though these practices were no longer present, the forces at play very much are. And there's one example involved with the Helphen that I think has been right in front of our face all along. The Forbidden Lands are one of the weirdest areas in the entire game, with no major points of interest, little to no references in the lore, and an atmosphere as though this area has been lost to time. But the one consistent theme tying everything here together is death. The only enemies here are the vulgar militiamen, who are said to appear after battles, claiming lands where warriors died. And that's very important, because one other major oddity about this area are these strange trails of red light, reminiscent of the golden guidance of grace that flows from sites of grace, but here there is no origin or destination of where the light travels. This is the only point in the entire game where we see something like this, and this is the moment where we delve away from the facts and the lore and get into the more speculative side of this topic in order to explain what this light might be. Looking back to the description of the Helphen Steeple, it describes something as the lampwood, with a light similar to that of grace in appearance. Now, lampwood is a very strange term, but if we look at the Japanese description, we can get more of a clear picture. A very literal translation would say something along the lines of a tree of light that serves as a guidepost in the spirit world. So the term lampwood in the English description more closely means something like a glowing tree, or a tree that emanates a light. So in theory, the Erdtree would be such a lampwood. Now, in the description of the Helphen Steeple, it described the lampwood light by two characteristics, one resembling the guidance of grace, and the second that only those that died in battle could see it. These fit that red light we can see in the Forbidden Lands. But what convinces me that this light might be the light of the Helphen is that red gem on the sword we talked about earlier. If this sword is depicting the Helphen, then the gem is almost certainly the lamplight, and the gem and the light are the exact same color. But if that is the case, then why can we see it? Well, considering the story of the Tarnished, they all died in battle, waging war across the sea until they were brought back to life by the grace extended by Queen Marika. So in theory, that would qualify them to see this light of the Helphen, but that still doesn't explain the full picture. Why would this lamplight only be in the Forbidden Lands? Well, if the lamplight is the guide towards the spirit world, then it kind of makes sense that the area beyond it, the mountaintops of the giants, is a place where, for a reason unexplained, the spirit world seems to have bled over, making the Forbidden Lands this sort of interstice between the world of the living and the spirit world, which is exactly the role of the Helphen. But one thing I want to explore a bit is this idea of a church being shown on the sword as part of the Helphen, because even if I'm totally wrong about that, and this is nothing more than ornamental design, there's still an interesting idea to unpack here. Even though we've established the many different forms of which passing on occurs in the lands between, there are many similarities and the same fundamental roots at play. When the Tarnished are called back to life by grace after dying in battle, they emerge unexplainedly in the Chapel of Anticipation, going from death in one realm to a church in a new one. Now, we read in the description of the death ritual spear that those burned with the Ghostflame anticipated some form of resurrection, likely on the other side. and if that was one means of passing on to the realm in which the Helphen guides the spirits to, especially those that died in battle, just as the Tarnished did, then perhaps they emerge in some chapel as well, following that black steeple of the Helphen, and perhaps that lampwood is the steeple itself. It is heavily speculated that the Helphen is going to play a big role in the DLC, and from all the lore analysis on death and the themes found in the DLC image that we've discussed so far, I believe part of it will involve traveling to the spirit world, likely by way of the Helphen. And you can find my reasoning for why I think that in the lore videos I listed earlier. But when it comes to the actual object of the Helphen itself, I hope this video helped you understand what this bridge between worlds is a little bit better, and why it's such an intriguing subject even though it only comes up one time. But if you want a much more in-depth analysis of this topic, I highly recommend checking out Crunchy's channel and his video on Elden Ring's structure of reality, where he presents the idea of the Helphen in the spirit world being a direct upside down of the world of Elden Ring. It's incredibly fascinating and aligns almost perfectly with the ideas I've discovered. But that is going to pretty much do it for this video. When it comes to the Helphen in the spirit world, ultimately we're going to have to wait and see if it gets explored in DLC in order to really come to any definite conclusions about it. But I do think out of all the questions we have about the lore, that is one that has a very good chance of getting answered, and may potentially even be the setting of the DLC. I sure hope so. But anyways guys, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. Once again, let me say a massive thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. If you want to jump in today, do not forget about my link down below to get your free boosters, silver lions, and customization decorations. And when you do, I will see you guys on the battlefield. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.